Is a college football super league happening? As reported by Ross Dellinger at Yahoo Sports, members of the ACC and the Big 12 leadership group, select presidents, met with the Rudy Project, the boys from Smash Capital, and talked about the possibilities of a super league, what it would look like, what the structure would look like, what the money would look like, what it needs to move forward. You might remember this. We talked about it on the show, where the president at Baylor tried to get every P4 university represented in a meeting in Dallas yesterday. And the SEC and the Big Ten said, pound sand, we're not coming. And select members of the Big 12 and the ACC actually did show up in Dallas. And it is an indication that there is an appetite, and Smash Cap and people like Smash Cap continue to work hard to try and drive home the foundation of a super league. But one thing is very clear. The SEC and Greg Sankey are simply not interested. And I think this is the most fascinating part of when a super league will happen, because it is not if, it is in fact when. What will it take to move Greg Sankey? And Jake, I think the biggest question is, can the ACC and the Big 12 come together and bring enough money to the table to make Greg Sankey reconsider his position on a super league?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that the ACC and the Big 12 are in a position where they're going to be chasing the SEC and by extension the Big 10 through this entire process. And you know, the obvious question is, well, hey, why wouldn't Greg Sankey and the SEC leadership be excited about the prospect of a super league? So I think we have to break that down into two portions. Number one, I think just generally speaking, conceptually, yeah, I think the SEC would be more than happy with a super league and making sure that, you know, everything's decided on the field and all of that, mainly because they've dominated on the field. The on-field performance for the SEC is not in question, as we've talked about today. But I think where folks like Greg Sankey, you know, start to, you know, maybe sour on the Super League a little bit, or current, you know, versions that he's been pitched or proposed, I think that Greg Sankey doesn't want to give up any semblance, any ounce of control. I think that in the current system, the SEC in the Big Ten dominate. They absolutely dominate. What better example than Alabama, you know, finding a way into the college football playoff over Miami, right? SEC's getting in over the ACC. And I think what Greg Sankey is most concerned about right now with a potential Super League situation is making sure that whatever that Super League looks like, however it gets set up, what the outline and the deciding factors are for the SEC maintaining control, that's what he's concerned about. I think he likes the concept of it, but I don't think Greg Sankey wants anything to do with changing the current model and giving up control on any level. Because what's the reality? Well, the reality is Greg Sankey's the most powerful guy in college football. And I wouldn't want to give up that mantle either. I think the guy absolutely loves the position he's in. I think he loves the position the SEC is in. And, you know, frankly, the SEC hasn't misstepped in many years now. You know, you add Texas and Oklahoma, you strengthen the league, like you're dominating the college football playoff. You're on ESPN every week now. Like what is there to complain about? What is there not to like in the SEC? So that's why I think we hear Greg saying, you know, the clip we always play or any of the other stuff he said, we always hear him talking about like, hey, I'm not going to change what we're doing in the SEC. The other conferences are going to have to, you know, pick up and, you know, try to keep up with us.
I am not going to lower the SEC so the others can keep up.
I don't want to dumb down the Southeastern Conference to be part of some Super League notion with 70 teams that some people speculate would happen. They want to be us, and that's on them to figure it out, not on me to bring myself back to earth.
So I don't
pretty straightforward.
I don't think that he hates the Super League concept. What I think he hates is the idea of, hey, one, we're going to give up any semblance of control that we have because we have a ton of control. But then secondly, to that clip, what he had just said there, he doesn't want to help. Like, he doesn't want to pull other people along. He's just concerned about the SEC and his partnership with Tony Petitti in the Big Ten.
I think it's influence and access. And I think when we look at, to your point, this Alabama-Miami situation, the SEC is going to win that. Because again, I agree with everybody who's been saying there's an SEC bias. Damn right there is.
Yeah.
And if you're the SEC, why would you give that up? Number two, I think it's money. Because remember what I've told you about Smash Capital. It's all Disney, guys. It's all Disney, ESPN, entertainment industry alums. Those are the people that are heading Smash Capital in this Rudy project. And what do we know about the Rudy project? You're going to only play people in the Super League. No more G5s on your schedule. No more Mercers for Alabama. That all goes away. You're playing Super League teams and only Super League teams, period. They're going to build custom matchups made for TV football games so that we get more Georgia-Bama. We get more Notre Dame-Georgia. We get more best versus best. End of story.
Yeah.
That's what Smash Capital and the Rudy Project is all about. Why do you think Jack Swarbrick, the former athletic director at Notre Dame, why do you think he's involved here? Does anybody think that that's significant? Well, if you don't think it's significant, here's why it is significant. Jack Swarbrick retired from Notre Dame as the athletic director. Only I don't believe, and a lot of people don't believe, that he retired. I think he stepped away from college athletics to grow college athletics. I think that's exactly what he did here. He's involved with the Rudy Project. And what does that mean? Well, he made an agreement for Notre Dame to have unfettered access to the college football playoff. They will always be in as long as they are one of the 12 ranked, 1 through 12 ranked teams in the country. Notre Dame's automatically in the college football playoff. I don't know how many people know that, but that's their agreement. We will not have a vote. We will not have a say on the future structure of the college football playoff. But if we're one of the 12 ranked teams in the country, we're in the college football playoff automatically. That's what Notre Dame has. He negotiated that, and then he left his job at Notre Dame, and he went to Smash Cap in the Rudy Project to do what? To get the college football playoff to happen. Because what was he unable to do? At Notre Dame, Swarbrick was unable to unify the ACC or unify everybody into the college football playoff to grow the game. And I think one of the things that's really important, what has Greg Sankey said? We cannot shrink college football. College football has to be a national brand. There has to be access for everybody. I don't think this is about money. I think this is about influence, and I think it's about control. And I think Greg Sankey is very well aware that he represents right now the SEC. And I'm not convinced that Greg Sankey wants to be the commissioner of college football. And that position will be created in a Super League. I think Greg Sankey likes his job a lot. I think he likes the influence and the power he has. And I think pretty plain and simple, I don't think he wants to give that up.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, you dig into the details of, some of these proposals, because the thing you got to understand is there's multiple different proposals coming out of, the Rudy Project, different setups, different how we would go about creating a Super League. And I thought one of the most interesting ones was basically that not a ton would change. You just really wouldn't have a committee that basically you would keep the power conference structure. Power conferences would all play power conferences. You'd no longer have Mercer on your schedule. You wouldn't be playing G5 opposition anymore. Basically, just the P4 are playing the P4, and then it's all decided on the field. And what's interesting to me about that is, again, the SEC, even in that way, loses control, right? And this is the point I'm trying to make, is that Greg doesn't hate the Super League. He hates the fact that the Super League is a carriage, is a bridge to them having less control. Because what happens if all the power teams are playing all the power teams, right? If we're getting, Alabama and Texas Tech or what,
Right.
Whatever matchup, right? At that point, then if, Big 12 team were to somehow, some way beat up on an SEC team on any given week, well, then the power dynamic in college football shifts. And I'm telling you right now, Greg Sankey wants nothing to do with that. And Greg Sankey wants nothing to do with giving more legs and more reach and more influence and power to dudes like Brett Yormark. Brett Yormark and Greg Sankey have a perfectly fine working relationship. But I'm telling you, Greg Sankey wants to keep things status quo as long as possible. The hard part with that, though, is if you look at the Rudy Project, they're talking about bringing in $9 billion into the sport. Like, $9 billion. That's a lot of money, bro.
Do you guys understand that Jack Swarbrick, what was his job less than a year ago? He was on the college football playoff committee. Where is he now? Well, he works for Smash Capital and the Rudy Project. Let that sink in. One of the formative members of the college football playoff committee now is at Smash Capital and the Rudy Project. Like these are not accidental things. And I think part of the thing that Greg Sankey and guys like Greg Sankey, men of power in this world, they don't like to be told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like to be nudged and pushed. And I don't know that Greg Sankey has a choice. It's going to happen. And I think when you look at some of the tenets of the Rudy Project, I think you're looking at administrators who have a lot of fear, because look at the effort by the Big 12 to sell, what was it, up to 20% of the league for $1 billion to private equity. Where did that idea come from? I don't know. Maybe the NFL allowing up to 10% equity shares through private funds. You guys know that, right? The NFL now allows private equity to own up to 10% of an NFL franchise. So let me get this right. If I'm an NFL owner, and the Buffalo Bills might be the best case of this, but if you look at ownership structure in the NFL, as long as you own 51% of the team, you're in control. What did Mark Cuban do? Mark Cuban sold off a pretty significant part of his team, remained in control, and brought in billions of new dollars to his franchise. Why would you say no to that? So you can operate at a higher level. Look at the Buffalo Bills. Did the exact same thing. They're building a new stadium now.
Yeah, and by the way, the investors all can clearly see a track record of the dollar they invest turning into $5 or $6.
And again, ultimately what drives these decisions is money. And ultimately, where does money come from right now? Television. But what has television told us? And I've said this 1,000 times on the show.
Yeah.
Television and TV deals are not bottomless pits of money. The money it's not like it's a printing press and we have as much as we want. So ESPN and Disney will just keep paying billions and more billions. That's not how it works. How it works is, yes, I believe ESPN and Disney and ABC and NBC and CBS and everybody else in the TV world, Fox, want a Super League to happen. Because what else does that do, especially for CBS, Fox, NBC, and ESPN and ABC? It only bolsters their NFL product.
Right.
Because again, I'll continue to tell you, they're going to have the conference or the championship game of college football on Saturday. And then Sunday, they're going to have the NFL championship game, otherwise known as the Super Bowl. I think that's going to happen.
Right.
I've heard it from too many TV people. I've heard it from too many TV people, including sources in the highest echelons of television who have told me a Super League is going to happen. It's simply a matter of how does it get funded and how does that funding get distributed to college football teams and by extension universities. Because the other dirty truth here is people like Boise State can't afford to compete with people like Ohio State. They just can't play in the same field. And so what you have is a huge disparity. You remember the video, and I think we still have it. You remember the video where you have Trent Bray, the head coach at Oregon State, talking about millions of dollars in their NIL collectives. In Corvallis.
I mean, it's always a product and demand thing, right? What are some of the schools that are going to come after our players, going to offer them to try to get them in the portal? So you're always looking at that, and the collective and everyone's done a good job of continuing to raise the bar that way. But as far as an exact number, I couldn't give it to you.
Well, just an estimate. I mean, millions and millions, or do you?
It's in the millions, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's in the millions. And then think about what that means. Okay, so it's millions of dollars in Corvallis, Oregon.
Yeah.
What's it in Columbus? What's it in Athens? What is it in Tuscaloosa? What is it in South Bend? SMU, who is paying their way into the ACC essentially, right? And then go back to what Matt Rule talked about. Because here's the part that I think is where it gets real, where the rubber meets the road. We don't have 150-something scholarships anymore. We have 100, and there's not going to be room for all of our favorite players anymore.
Yeah, the roster limits are a real factor. I mean, it's just I can't imagine what's going to happen in the next 6 months. And if you're like a coach who's really cares about people, you're going to have to tell guys at the end of the season, like, hey, there's no spot for you here next year. So the guys can go and find somewhere else to go. And, like, you have some players probably who are like, I'm not touching the ball enough, or I'm unhappy. And they're like, I'm going to go in the portal. And you think about the effect that's about to happen. The portal's already flooded. So we have 150, and we need to go to 105. That's 45 guys. Now, I know some seniors, but we'll add some guys. Just think about 20 to 30 guys from every school having to go into the portal, and the effect it's going to have on FCS, and then on Division II, and then on NAIA and Division III. It's going to be, so to your point, when Marquise and Jamari say, hey, we want to come back, that's 2 more people now that can't be here next year. And so it's going to be really, not just unique. I sometimes say unique. It's going to be a challenge.
I think that's real.
Yeah.
That is on the ground, on the front lines of college football, where you're having to tell 50 guys, I don't have a spot for you anymore.
Well, and I think on the other side of that, it's real in the sense that your head football coach has to be an elite developer because they have less guys to work with now. I mean, it's been an age-old process that, like, take Ohio State as an example, whatever team you want. The best of the best have 4 deep at every position. And they had that luxury. So it was just like a next man up thing. And you could just develop all these guys through practice and through your individual position group rooms and all that stuff. But now the situation's changing because you're not going to be 4 deep at every position because that's not possible anymore. So we're going to start to see, like, hey, if injuries pile up or if all those other external factors that come for a football team are going to be much more. It's like what's happening with the 49ers. Right? Look how much impact the injuries have done to that team this year. I mean, that was a Super Bowl contending team that now is going to struggle to win, a reasonable amount of games and just have a halfway decent season. And so I look at this whole Rudy project, Super League, recruiting, NIL situation, and it's going to get worked out. Something's going to happen. But I just think that when you talk about selling 20% of college football or a team or whatever, I just think that brings in a new dynamic. And it's kind of what you always say, like unintended consequences of having more hands in the pot. And I think that we don't quite at this early stage in this process understand how that's going to ultimately affect the on-field product at the end of the day.
Think about what Matt Rule said about the portal. The portal's already got hundreds of kids in it. And now you're going to put 50 plus from every school. Do you really think Matt Rule is going to tell Dylan Raiola, no, I'm not going to make Patrick Mahomes jokes, but do you think he's going to tell Patty Ice Light that he doesn't have a spot for him on his roster? No. Who's he going to talk to? He's going to talk to the last 20 kids on his roster. Oh, wait, he'd have done that already. Because good coaches lop off the bottom quarter of their roster.
Yeah.
So he's going to go to kids who are 4s and 5 on his roster, 4th string, 5th string. He's going to go to the second long snapper. He's going to go to the guy who only plays gunner on special teams. He's going to go to the guy that everybody likes but isn't good enough to play at Nebraska football, and he's going to tell him, I don't have a spot for you. So if you're not good enough to play at Nebraska, how far down the ladder do you fall? Well, you probably fall to G5.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a gunner, and let's say you're a DB, and you can't run at the D1 level, like you can't run at the Big 12, Big 10, SEC level, you can certainly run with Fresno State.
Yeah.
So now what happens there? Okay, well now at the Fresno State, let's say the gunner who's now a starting corner or now a number 2 corner just pushed another guy out. Where's he going to go? Well, if he got pushed out of Fresno State, he's good here. Well, then he went there, but what?
Yeah.
You're just pushing guys down the road. And are you growing college football? You're not. What are you doing? You're shrinking. You're contracting. So I continue to go with this whole thing about how do we fix this? Well, how we fix this is you have to create a super league that, in my opinion, is the four power conferences, and that's really it. And then when you have teams that opt out, because again, I don't know how to break this to you, there are Power 4 teams who will opt out. They don't want to pay $1 billion a year to play college football. They will opt out. Then you're going to say, hey, Boise. Then you're going to say, hey, XYZ school. Who's currently the SMU? Is it Sac State? Is it San Diego State and the pro rata they deserve? Probably not. But is it Boise State? I would guess so. But go find those 5 schools that want to bump up. 64 teams, 70 teams, whatever the number is you want to put on it. And that's it. And every year, I think you can have universities that opt out. Is that contraction? Call it what you want.
But I also think, too, another tidbit that really came out of this Ross article was the idea of relegation inside of the Super League, meaning, hey, so like, obviously we're going to have bars, right? Like, hey, you're going to win your division, like just like we do in the NFL. But if you don't win, then you're not going to get paid a big chunk. We're not going to do, TV deal, everyone gets paid. No, we're not doing that anymore. You got to win, and then you get paid.
I think what I don't know what that'll look like. I'll continue to say right now, the ACC, the Big 12, I think the Big 12 will be one of the first leagues to dynamically change their payout system. Because if you're, again, Dave Aranda, and you're not going to the college football playoff, you're getting exponentially less. Your college football playoff team is getting exponentially more than Oak State. Oak State doesn't get a payout. They didn't win a conference game. They don't get a payout.
Yeah.
You didn't go to the tournament. You don't get a payout. I'm with Florida State on that way of thinking. We win more, we deserve more. Gonzaga in the Pac-12. We win more, we deserve more.
Boise State.
We win more, we deserve more. I'm 100% about that.
Yeah.
And I think the Big 12 is close to that now. I think they are talking about that the merit-based payouts. But a Super League is happening.
Yeah.
As simple as I can say it.